Thanks for coming, spending your Saturday morning. I'm not used to being on the road on a Saturday morning these days. Been retired for a few years. I represent South Tillamook County Emergency Volunteer Corps. I work on the communication side of that. Part of the presentation today is going to be specifically on the radios. Want you to be able to walk out of here and know how to use them. Not that you have to know everything about them, but you know how to turn them on. You know what to look for on the screens, and you can show that you can talk into them and know how to use them, and then we'll be successful today. But the other part of the presentation that I want you to know is what are we doing for communications in South County, alternative communications, and the strategies that we're looking at, so that you know where things fit in when an emergency, if and when it should occur. John?
Yep.
So the radios today, I just want to, when would you use these radios? All right, what kind of an emergency would you pull these out? You'd want to know, I relate back to the fire that we had, the wildfire a couple of years ago, and down in Nesquin, and we were kind of, if it had gone through Slab Creek, we would have been right in its sights, and it stopped, it didn't go through that canyon, so the emergency kind of, but for a while, it was touch and go with, and things that, what happened? Am I going to be impacted? Do I need to leave, right? Are we going to be evacuated? And how do you find out information? It's very evident that there's a lot of information for those that were following that. McDonald's had burned down, the Walgreens had burned down, Safeway was up in flames, the post office was gone. They had to evacuate. There was big evacuation, right? And fire burned into the road around the lake there. So it was certainly a critical situation, but the information was just how do you find good information? You have to get good, reliable information. On our website, on the main page, there's a brochure we put together that will tell you where you can go to get good information. For example, if you go to Twitter or Facebook for the Sheriff's Department, you will get information there that's posted, or the emergency management site. Which radio stations, right, will broadcast. So you need, information's important, but it's also critical to know that you have good, valid, information that you can trust. So the question to everyone, right, during an emergency, how do you get information? Next slide, John. And then, right, toss into that mix that all of a sudden, I don't have a phone, I can't text, there's no electricity, power's out, right? I have no internet, and I have no TV. All right? I'm not sure, could I have much else fail from a communication side? All right, these are all things, when I think about it, I've been, using computers and phones, all this going back into the early 90s, right? And what are you going to do? Where are we going to find information? It's at that point when all else fails, right? That's the point where a radio can become your last point of communication with your neighbors, right? To find out situations that they may know and that you're able to communicate and talk with someone. So why would you have a radio like this? You can call for help. You can stay in touch. You can do health and welfare checks, provide reports. You can request help, monitor the county's emergency services. You can listen to FM radio, can be a good source of information. And then communications with your utilities during an emergency. These radios that we have, these were obtained through a grant. And they're new radios for us. We normally will support a radio from a manufacturer, Bofeng, and it's called a B-Tech. Not that you have to remember any of that. But the important thing about that radio that we chose that one to support is it gives us the ability to listen to emergency services. You're right next to Mount Hebo here, and all the repeaters, not all of them in the county, but they have main repeaters. We'll talk what a repeater is as we get a little further. But they're broadcasting from right up on Mount Hebo, and during an emergency you could hear what they're talking about. You can't talk to them. I mean, we don't use their emergency services band to talk. But there are other capabilities, right, that you don't necessarily have, right, but it doesn't negate the use of these radios still for the communications. But there are other options, and I don't want to just say that these radios are the wherefore-all, all right? We're going to talk as we go in that the problems we have in South County. But you could have a satellite telephone, right? And during an emergency, everything's good, right? Because on the ground, you're not going to be hit, right, with the physical, right, problems, right? Satellites may get overloaded, right, because of the traffic going over them, but they're not going to be impacted by a physical fire or earthquake, anything like that. And then there are other providers. Starlink's the newest one that's out there. I'm seeing use in this across the county now, and I know the Nesquin Water District uses it, and I've sat through board meetings. They use that as their primary internet. You can get a little drop in service sometimes, but it's darn good. And during an emergency, if you have power, right? Radios are, is one thing but long term you need power, right? Somehow, and if you have that, Starlink can also be a good option. All these are great, right? But there's a cost to all of these to have them. And you can also become a ham operator. So ham opens up radio communications into places that you just can't go with your radio. It opens up the channels, the frequencies that you can use. And there are methods that we use today. You can even send email. So as my learning, right, that's an area that I'm currently involved with and working to actually get certified for the to be a responder for radio communications for the county or the state if they should call us in. Program's called ARIES. Next slide. So today, as I said, I want you to walk out of here and actually know that you can turn your radio on and use it. You know what channels to go on for that you're going to communicate with, and that's what we're going to get through the basics. And with that is the starting to talk, right, to understand what goes into that. But I also want you to understand the communications approach that that we're looking into and using in South County. I want to talk about what a net is for communications, and then any next steps. Probably take us, it'll be maybe 45 minutes. We'll get through all these. Interrupt me, I should say, at any point. If you have a question, probably others have it, and I'd rather, when we're on the material, actually, let's just break. We'll have loads of time to get through everything. Battery, anyone have any? I'm going to get you through the basics, right? And you may see more information here on some of the slides, and I may call it out, but I'm going to get your eyes to the basics. Any questions on the battery installation of your batteries or getting those charged up on the chargers? Specifically, we got those out early, right? So you'd have a chance to actually come in and to actively use the radios. Okay, so and you should have extra battery packs. If we find those extra one, if it turns up, if you can let me know that.
I accidentally gave somebody an extra one, I think, an extra pack. So if it was you, then.
Anybody get 2 packs of extra batteries?
You gave us between ours and Carrie's, you gave us 3. Okay, I need one of those back then. We're going to take those with one of the other radios. Okay, all right.
Good, thank you. Keep again, this goes with, if there's going to be like we said, everything's down, you've got your radio. The radios do, depending on where you get electricity to recharge them, right? It's good, the extra batteries, you can keep those just charged up and ready to go so that when your first one goes, you've got a second one you can plug in there and then your third one. So that's what those extra batteries are for the preparation for an emergency. And everyone should have gotten 2, right? So that you actually have as a family, right? You're able to, right, have and communicate with these. I'm going to call out on this, just the important pieces, and there's a lot of, you can learn about these, right? And I like reading manuals like that, but I want to call out the important things so that you know. The knob, number 14, everyone should know that. That's going to turn your radio on and off, all right? And you're welcome to go through this and do this as we're sitting here, right? There's also, you've got that front display in through here. What's that? This? Yes. You've got your display right in here, right? You'll see things like your channel number, right? Which channel. You're going to see things on the top row. You'll see where you've got your battery, which is going to tell you how much charge you have left. There's the one in the middle I like because it's like a thunderstorm, right, on the icon. But that's your weather. These radios do get NOAA radio weather, which we already know we can get off Mount Hebo with these radios. 15, on the side of the radio, it's what they call, you see it PTT, it's your talk button, push to talk, all right, is what the PTT is, and we'll talk about the use of that. There is some of the menu, you've got a series of buttons here. In the middle, you've got a menu button. We'll talk about that as important. There's a scan button there that we will also talk about. Has a built-in microphone. You can get an additional external speaker for it if you wanted. When I was working with the CERT group, we would do traffic control. And if you're holding up a sign, right, or a pointer, you don't necessarily want to have your other hand with a radio. So we get an external mic as this is, right, and then clip it on and put the radio in. Anything else? All right, you can go on to the next.
The radios did come with that.
Yes, they do, and if you can use, I've never had any luck with those type, just my ears, whatever. I use a different one that I've gone and purchased, but yes, I haven't actually, I use a different radio, so I haven't seen actually the contents opening it up. But if you can use those can be very viable. I just can't use those. So again, here you can see Vox just is the voice. It's voice operation. You'll see that change when we go into weather. You'll see WX, I believe, is the. You've got the battery, as I said. The battery up here, channel number. We're going to talk about this HML, high, medium, or low. And I'm going to show you how to. I can't program these radios. We program the other ones. But I want you to know how to turn these onto the highest power that you can get them on. So it's going to be important. And on for you to know how to do that. This is just TX transmit and receive. There are some specialty codes you can put in. That's what that 142 is. Our radios, we treat these open. We're not using any special codes to keep things quiet. We want the radios to be open for everybody to hear them. These radios come with 50 channels. And It's really giving you the 28, I believe it's GMRS channels, and then there are 6 weather channels that are in there also. Going up to 50, what they've done is they've just duplicated the GMRS channels, and they put different codes on it to give you 50 channels you can use and use those presets. We're going to stick with the original GMRS channels.
It was GMS.
Global Mobile Radio Service.
If we wanted to use one of those special codes like just for our group, can we do that?
You could, but I wouldn't. You could, yes. If you, the GMRS, you could have other people, for example, in HEBO that are also on the radios. And you could, it would be a decision that you would make, right? My thinking is the radios would be open so that anybody, say in HEBO, that needed something, they could be able to talk to you and you would be able to talk to them. And so
I just meant if we needed to communicate between each other privately.
you could absolutely do that. Yes. If you had, for example, at church, something you were doing and you wanted to have people with radios, right, situated, you can absolutely put that in on and use one of those other channels and choose any, really, you just choose any of those to use them. Absolutely, yeah. With radios, we've probably all seen these, what they call these walkies, right, around these little, they're called FRS, Family Resource Service. And those are about 6 channels on those, low power. The next step up is the GMRS. They've also come in with the channels they call MURS, M-U-R-S, and don't ask me that acronym, I can't recall. But it's similar to the GMRS. There's some benefits going both ways. We've decided to go with the GMRS radios in South County that we're using. North County, if you're up there, these radios will also, they use GMRS, a different radio, but you would be able to link into their GMRS up there if you wanted to hear, and if you're traveling and are up there and need to get on the radio. So a couple of things here. We talked about the battery meter. Key lock icon can be useful. I talked about the parade. So when we do a parade, when I was working, we'd set our radios to certain stations, right? And you want everybody that's obviously at the different locations to be set to hear, right? And because the radio, you're carrying around and using it and whatever, it can get bumped and you can change the channel inadvertently. There is a key lock, which is, you'll see the icon number, you can see it's number 3. Sometimes you may set that, right? All of a sudden your keyboard's not working. Take a look at that also. Maybe you have just bumped into the key lock, right, and set it. But that's kind of just one to kind of know about. Know weather, we'll talk about that. It has vibrate. It can have a siren. The transmit power, number 11, we're going to talk about that. And I've already mentioned the privacy codes, right? So that's, in a quick, right, couple of minutes, that's all all of the display. Okay, next slide. So, and again, walk through these. If there's any question about this, we can just, go right into it and talk about it. To turn the radio on and to set the volume of the radio, you just turn that top knob, right? And we'll turn the radio on. Yeah, you can read the, you'll get different beeps, right, on that. All right, next slide. This is important. In HEBO, because South County, we help support basically the entire Nestucca Rural Fire Protection District. And it's an incredibly large district that runs from down in Slab Creek all the way up here, up to Beaver, a little further, out to Blaine, and then out to, I know I'm pointing wrong, out to Blaine, and then Sand Lake, right? So it's an incredibly, and we've broken it up into different, so Nesquin's on a different channel frequency. We have, you're here, you have a different frequency and channel. I believe it's 20. We'll get to it and see which one it is. And it's so that there's not overlap between the communities. So when you're talking, you get your community here. So how do you change a channel? Everyone, if you got the radios on, it by default it comes up to channel 1. All right. You can see a couple of buttons to look at. You should look at your menu button, and then there's some arrows. All right. That's fine. But sure. All right. You can change it, right? Now you'll be able to change it to whatever we're going to need. So to change a channel, you press the menu button. All right, and then you would use your arrows to change the channel. And you should see, right, the channel change from 1 to... Right? Any questions on that? All right. And then you can push, when you get to the channel you want, you can push press to talk, the PTT, or the menu button again, and that will push to talk. Menu button again will move you to the next menu item, which we're not going to be... Menu is like next class, right? That's just too much to go over today. All right, so that's really critical, right? You can turn it on, you can change. So when we get to the slide with the Hebo channel, I'll have everybody change to the Hebo channel at that time. All right, next slide. So these, by the way, are right out. I will admit to taking these from the manual, right? I rewrote some, but pretty much they're the instructions you need for running it. So you will find these instructions in your manual guide you should have gotten. So you're going to hold the radio, right, a couple of inches, 2 to 3 inches, right, from your mouth. You're going to press and hold the push to talk button, right, and give it a second. Let the connections, right, they're not instantaneous. I talk really fast. I hope I'm not talking like super fast today, but I talk really fast. In the first class I went into, it was like no one can even understand me because I was going, right, talking so fast. It's like I take a deep breath, right, and let it connect. And then you talk into it in a normal voice in the microphone. When you are finished talking, release the push to talk button. All right, and then you're back into listen mode. And they always put this in. I can never understand it because you'll see the RX icon change, right, when you're it's like I can't even read that. They're so small already, and if I'm talking into it, I'm not looking at it to see. But these radios may have a light that changes from green to red, and you will see the RX or the TX for receive or transmit. They have a note here about range, so let's just talk about range of these radios. I have seen, right, and these may even say it, right, that these radios will reach 35 miles. 36? Yeah. Yeah, that's like, we have, with our GMRS radios, we are able to go from, I'm up on the crest in Nesquin, and I have reached over to Sand Lake, where we have some people with radios over there. 11.3 miles line of sight. There's nothing in between, right? Well, yeah, Cape Kiwanda, right, but it's a relatively low. And I've reached over there. I don't know anywhere else in this county, right down here, that you're going to get anywhere near that, right, type of range. We have far too many trees. Well, great. I mean, I'm not knocking trees, right? But we have a lot of trees, right? Canyons, hills, right, that go up to, Mount Hebo. What's Mount Hebo? 3,000, I think? Something like that. But we have a lot. We are not set up, right? This South County is a hard place for communications, right? That's why we have like hams, right, that are trained, that have more equipment, more options, bigger antennas, right, to be able to make communications out of this. These radios are meant to be within a community like Hebo, and we need to, the best thing to figure out range is we have to go and test, right, to make sure who you can talk to and who you can't. Sometimes signals may need to be relayed, right, sometimes not. And it's hard to know until we took a look at some analysis. We have someone from Cloverdale. Yep, and we have some other communicators actually in Cloverdale, which if it's okay with you, I'm going to actually link you up so that in Cloverdale. But is it Three Rivers?
Yeah.
Yep. We have from Cloverdale. There's like a great line of sight, right over to Three Rivers. Nothing. I looked at in preparation today. Looked at some mapping, and we should be able to get a signal from Cloverdale. Are we going to get the signal directly from Cloverdale to the church here? There's a good-sized hill in between, and I don't know the answer to that, but we need to test, and then we'll know. But from Cloverdale, I'm pretty confident that we can get a signal past, by going through Three Rivers, is it, right? And I'm pretty sure we're going to get your signal from there to the church here, all right? But we need to test that. And then everyone else is in Hebo, is that right? Okay, I don't know, right? We live between Hebo and Beaver. It's a canyon, right, with some hills. The highway kind of skirts around the hills. So that's one that has to be tested. And I believe the Hebo will be able to get the signals here to the church. Okay, but we're not going to get 35 miles. And no. And these hills are really tough. So we will have to test and see. And while we're just talking about that, do we, as a group, want to do that when we finish today? Do we want to just, as everybody goes back home, do we want to just do the testing on today? I'm seeing nods of heads, yes? Okay, that's what we will do. Okay. This is...
We do have the young lady with the baby. She is up Blaine. Oh, yeah, but I'm just saying that's her location.
is in Blaine.
Yes, she's up Blaine, probably, Iona, 4 miles? 2.5.
Going to Blaine.
On Wolf Creek? On Wolf Creek. So,
Let me just make sure I've got it. So going, Beaver, yeah, okay. We are not going to get what we do need, I do have some people in Beaver, right? And we'll need to get a test with them to see if we can get you there. I just know there's no, we'll try, right? But I'm not convinced we'll get a signal back to the church. But we do have someone in Beaver and a few people, and we need to test that. Yep.
So basically, like say take something at Blaine, they're going to go to Beaver, Beaver's going to communicate with Evo. Does Beaver reach Evo?
Yeah.
it'll have to be, it'll have to be a network.
Yeah. Again, where we have hams that are able to support you, right, the situation changes because a ham can get a signal into what we call different geographic areas.
So I guess what's the difference? What is the difference between a ham and these radios? What's the?
I'll get to it. Great question. Yeah. We'll talk about that as we get a little further. Yeah. So again. This is important because I want you to be on the highest power level, right, that you can be on, all right? So, so I'd like everyone to change to, if you can change to channel 20. All right? And then hit your push to talk button so it changes to channel 20. And then what I like everyone, I would like you to change on that to the high power is what set those. I believe it's going to keep that memory, right? So you don't have to do it every time. We will have to make sure on that. All right, but here's what you're going to do. All right, so 15 to 33 and 38 to 50, right? So we're on channel 20, so we're good there. We're going to press the menu button until PR icon appears blinking on the display. All right, and then
It's just a capital P, lowercase r. It'll be flashing.
Gary, mine was defaulted to high, so if you have a little tiny H
H, then you're good.
in the upper right corner of the channel number,
Yes, that is right. All right, so yours defaulted. Is everybody else defaulted to high? All right, so you're good. All right, so we are just where we want. You're going to get the most power out of these radios.
Does it use too much battery power?
It does, and once it hits the lower, it's going to revert back to a low power. Once I think it gets to 1 bar, I think it is. All right, so good. We are defaulted where we want to be.
What is PR, sorry? Just power.
Okay, next slide. These are a couple of, I'll call these out. They can be some useful features. So, how loud is my radio? Right, there's signals, there's noise right in the air today. If you want to set your volume and know how loud it is, pressing and holding the monitor button for 1 second will let you hear the open airwaves. There. And then you can adjust your volume. All right. And then press and hold the monitor for 1 second again. Right. And then it leaves monitor. Right. Turn it down. Turn your. And then turn your volume. Yep. There. No, this is exactly why we want to walk. You're good. Say that again, I'm sorry? Oh, yeah, let me, yeah. Yep. So, see the monitor, the menu button and the WX? We'll get to that.
Saturday night, easing slightly to 2 to 4 feet Sunday morning. First, very strong at around 7:30 on Saturday. Now it's 6.
Hold the thought, because we're going to look at the weather in a minute, and I can't recall what it was till we get to this slide. There is on the menu button, and we're going to talk about the weather. You'll see under it, it says WX. We switched into the weather mode versus the voice mode, and we'll look at that in a minute. I can't recall how to get out of that mode, but we'll take a look at that. Another good one is a scan, right? If you want to hear what's going on, it will go to each station one at a time, right? There are 50 stations, all right, and it's going to go, all right, and most of those are on that you're not using, right? So is it going to be useful to you? You know, you're going to keep it probably on the station that you want to use, right, for your local area that you're communicating with everyone.
What if we have like 3 different areas in here that we want to communicate with, like if someone's in the different places, they use a different number, right? Like you said, people might be 20 or whatever, but like,
You can go to that separate channel.
Yeah,
You know
if
what channel it is.
If just as I look at it as a community and not breaking it apart, but having an open community. So if someone is within the Hebo area, then they would all be on that same channel. It's like you're sharing a party line.
what if like we're in Nescoin and we
Oh.
want to hear what's going on?
You're not going to hear here from Nescoin.
Okay, what about Weaver or whatever? Cloverdale?
Yeah, Cloverdale, you may hear through you may hear direct from Cloverdale, we have to test that, or you're going to hear through Three Rivers, right, on passing of messages.
Cloverdale is the golden child.
Yeah. We are able to get, our hams are able to communicate over, but we need, here, I don't know of an active ham that's working with us. So if we do, you actually are in a little better position in the sense that the Hebo Fire Station is right around the corner, all right? That is the Emergency Operations Center for South County. If we're called in to help out, one of the locations that we would come to as a ham would be the fire station. And at the fire station, we're going to both be listening on our ham frequencies, but we're also going to be monitoring Hebo, right? So if you may have the ability to actually get messages going back by working with the ham operator there for passing a message back to Nesquin.
So when you're operating the ham, are you basically just like going to one channel, one community channel at a time and sending a message to each community channel?
That could be a way, but it's both time consuming. It's called simplex, passing one-to-one, or direct line, a direct line. Messages can be, changed along a thread. If all else fails, that's the way you would pass messages. But we use different technologies which allow for longer transmissions of signals, so we don't necessarily have to do that from a ham's. Yes, yeah, much more. So I'm not sure the scan's going to be useful. What I've done with the radios that we program for South County is I set them up for the radios for the surrounding community, for you and the surrounding communities. So Nesquin maybe would be Pacific City, Slab Creek, and then also I would put in for scanning the emergency services like police and fire so that I could scan through and hear things. Well, then it's 6 or 8 channels and it goes pretty quickly and they're all useful, right, for having it. I'm not sure that this is going to be useful.
Are those the 28 channels you mentioned earlier that you have assigned?
For the radios you have, those are the 50 channels that it siphons through. So 28 GMRS, and then it goes through the remainder, which are GMRS, but they have security codes on them. So no, this is, again, we'll figure out how to come out of it, all right? Weather can be useful. If you don't have an FM radio, it can be useful to have, right, and to know what stations you can get. It's just getting ways to get information. NOAA radio, there are 3 repeaters. I think I've got it on the next channel. 3 places in this county that you can get it. There's one in Mount Hebo, Cape Mears, and I think Neocani Mountain there. I've gone through on the next slide. But to turn the NOAA weather radio function on, let's see, the radio, you're going to press and hold the menu button for 5 seconds while in the GMRS mode. And that should switch from the Vox to WX for weather. And then it's going to scan. To turn that off, press the push to talk button.
I did that, but it still has the weather with the channel. Yeah, it's still. You guys need to be in PR.
How do you get back to GRMS or GMRS?
Say that again.
How do you get back to
You would use, so to turn the NOAA weather radio off, press the push to talk button. And it should take you right back to the channel that you were on.
You know, I think that the bottom line that we all need to remember is, first of all, today's a primer. Secondly, everything these radios can do, we are not going to need to know.
No.
We are going to need to know a few things, and
And additionally, these, you can either go through the manual or this, I posted this. There are just probably a few slides of how to do it, maybe 5 or 6, and you keep it as a cheat sheet, and you'll be good to go. Yeah, the weather could be a good one to, yeah.
So we have the manual that came with the radios, and you have a brochure on the website.
Yes.
You can always refer back to, plus the video from today.
Yes.
So we don't need to absorb all of this today and become proficient. So
That's,
let's,
I would agree with that, yes. You do need to know how to turn it on, change the channel, and talk when you leave today. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. There is a way to manually change it, but you can go through that and you'll figure that out. So when you first turn it on, it scans through all the channels. Once it's doing that, you can then change to any one particular channel. For example, Mount Hebo, and just listen to that. You don't need to have it scan. And once it hits the first active one, weather always transmits, so it's always going to listen anyways to that station. I highlighted here frequencies. You can see there's one for Mount Hebo. It's set to channel 7 on the radio. And then I highlighted the 3 and 4, which are set to Cape Mears and Neoconi. I did not test those others. I did hear the weather come off of Mount Hebo, though, before we started today. Next slide. And again, I'm just going to go through these, and just so you know what's there, but again, these are not the critical. There is a call alert. You can have a siren. We talked about keypad. That's one kind of just to know about, because you could find yourself with your keypad locked and not know why to get out of that. There's, illumination of the display. There is a dual watch, which could potentially be useful. Right? If you did set up a channel here, or a couple of channels that you were using, say, for a church function, and you would be able to monitor both of those, not through scan that's going through all the 50, but you could actually set up a major and then a minor channel. And it goes through I'm not going to take you through it, but just to know that exists, that you could set that up if needed. Has a whisper function, and then I talked earlier about an external microphone jack. A couple of things I just put in here, just so, again, if something's not working, you'll be able to just turn to it. The keypad's not working, check that it's locked. Not hearing what you expect to hear, make sure that you're on that right channel, right? So if you need to be on 18 or 20, that you're listening on that channel. And then if you're lost or confused, just turn the radio off and turn it back on.
when all else fails,
Just turn it off and start again. Yeah. All right, starting to talk, I want to talk about a few things here before we actually talk. So I've talked about a lot of these things already. In our area, we're blocked by hills, trees. Keep your antenna vertical. You want to give it a chance, right? If you're in the house and it's not working, step outside. You may need to find a place that works for the radios, right? That just comes with testing and understanding the radio. It may need to be a high point. Don't be in the car. That's worse than like the house, because you're just surrounded by metal, right? So step out of the car. It could just be a few feet. It could just be turning one way or the other, right? These are things you just have to, you just got to figure it out and work with it.
If somebody was on, went to Mount Hebo, do you think they'd be able to transmit to quite a bit of Cloverdale, Hebo?
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about how we do that.
Yeah.
In just a minute. Absolutely.
The river's right about Mount Hebo, so we, go to high ground,
Yeah, but Yeah, high ground is definitely and that's why all the equipment for communications is up on Mount Hebo. Yeah.
I didn't look in the manual. Are these antennas upgradable?
No, not on these radios.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, on the other handhelds, it's another feature why we went with the other ones. You can always, if everything pans out and works well, you can always, go to, upgrade at some point to use them. But this will give you the basic function that you need to communicate. And now some words of caution about this, right? It's a radio, not a cell phone, right? It's not one-to-one. It's like a big old party line, right? Not sure anyone remembers party lines anymore. My grandmother had a party line. Conversations are broadcast to everyone, right? You're not going to talk on a radio about sensitive information, right? You're not, for example, going to talk about someone being injured, right? And, Molly's hurt, she broke her leg down on, or she's off at the... Be considerate and cautious. You're not going to say, yeah, Jerry's away, their family's away for 3 weeks, Well, no, yeah, there could be security issues, around that. So caution, right, of how you use the radio. Don't not use the radio, right? But just you have to give thought, right? Radio's meant to be brief, concise. I find it so much easier to be able to look at someone, right? And I get a lot in feedback, right? But in a radio, I don't see eyes and I don't hear everything all great, right? So it's more difficult with the radio. So caution. We also use call signs, simple ones. It's just to protect, right? A certain level that we said, yeah, that's okay, that we'll use them. With hams, they're more sophisticated. So I've got like a KI7 BDW, right, which took me a while to remember, right? All we do here in South County is we're going to use the first name and then the initial of the last name. So I'm known as Gary D, right? It just provides a simple level of anonymity for people on the radio. Be brief and to the point. Think about what you want to say, right, before you actually write. And only one person can talk at the same time, right, which can be tricky, especially if it's an emergency and you're using it. I'll talk about how we sometimes will get around that, but if it's frantic, just if two people are talking at the same time, what you're going to get is a garbled, right? You're going to hear something that's not clean. You may hear one over the other, maybe not. And again, before you transmit, is someone talking? Is your, can you see your receive, on your menu or your light? Is it on? Is it okay to talk, right? So you just have to, be wary of that. And if it's garbled, maybe step back, let the other person, right, have their say, and then you'll come in and say what you want to say. And then leave a few seconds between transmissions, right? Because someone may want to get in there, right, and say something. So, right, maybe someone has an emergency and they want to call out emergency, right? Well, give a couple of seconds in there just in case there is something that needs to be kind of highlighted. I talked about call signs. First name, right, first initial, right, the last name. CERT, I don't know if we have any CERT members, anyone? They could use, they could show up at a parade or a search or something, and they may give out tactical call signs. You're CERT 1, CERT 2, CERT 3, right, and that's what they're known at, right, so it could be a tactical call sign. And then hams also have, right, I gave you my call sign, so we're going to have different call signs. And you'll even, there could be FCC licensing, right? I'll talk about the GMRS in a bit. So when you're starting to talk, you're going to listen, right? You don't hear anything, right? You're going to press the push to talk, right? Take a breath. You're going to talk, we had said there was 2 to 3 inches that was recommendation for these radios. In a simple conversation, it's just, hey, you, it's me, right? And then that's what it is, right? Hey, you, and you're answering, yep, it's me. I mean, that's your simple conversation, right? Again, push to talk, push it in when you're talking, release it right to here. One other thing, go back one slide. When you end a conversation and you're finished, right, completely finished with that conversation, you're out, right? So that the person on the other line knows that you've finished and completed. Otherwise, they don't necessarily know that there's more to come, right? So we'll always finish that out. There's lots of other words, but I'm not going to, great. But you want someone to know that you've given the information. I'll also use copy, right, a lot, because then I'll repeat the information, right, just to make sure that it got over correctly. So we're going to do this before we leave today. After we finish all the slides, as everyone leaves, we're just going to hook up and make sure everyone can set the channel and say, yep, hey you, it's me, right? And I know you can set your channel and talk, and then we'll be on our way. All right, next. So here's the approach. I've talked a lot of this already, so I'll just kind of breeze over it. Large geographic area, and we break it down into geographic areas, smaller areas called zones. And then within a zone, we have a GMRS communications network, community network. Across zones and out of area communications, that's where, again, we're talking about the hams. More power, right, ability to get out of this area, right, further communications, different types of communications. So with GMRS radios within a zone, they form the community communications network. Each zone, and I've got it up in the presentation, has a primary and secondary channel. And then, as I said earlier, testing's required. We just don't, I could look at maps, but we need to really physically test on the ground to make sure what you've got. And I did put a link in the presentation. You can go out there and, I've got an example of what it looks like, but you can go out there and look at all the different zones of communications that we have. And this shows here our current network going from out on Slab Creek Road, going up through Nesquin, out through Pacific City, out to Tierra del Mar, through Cloverdale, Hebo, and Beaver. We're up to probably near 90 radios. When we first started, I was working with the CERT team. We probably had about 6 radios in the county, in South County, and we're now up to about 90 GMRS radios. These are the primary and secondary channels. And again, we've done that just so we don't get cross communications between zones. We reuse a lot of these channels because these are the channels that can be put on high power. So I want you to be on the high power. So, but we're so far dispersed, we know you're not going to have trouble going over the zones.
This slide power is going to be PowerPoint's going to be available.
It's in the brochure, I'm assuming.
No, it's in the PDF file you sent, right?
What's that?
The link, it's in the link that.
Yes. Yep.
It's in the link that we put on the church website.
And then we've talked a bit about hams, right? Tested and licensed. They utilize repeaters. That's the piece of equipment that sits on Mount Hebo. A repeater just takes in a signal and then pushes it out. Comes in on one frequency, gets pushed out on a second one. All this, one person could talk at the same time. All that is still in place, but it allows you to take that signal, hit that repeater, and then it on Mount Hebo, and then it gets retransmitted. So we can use repeaters to get all around the county today. Repeaters are used for emergency services. We have different ham repeaters, so it provides a lot more power and going further distance, right, than the GMRS radios will. Hams assist with work on the auxiliary, the communication strategy. They coordinate out-of-area communications, provide help communicating counties, emergency operations centers, schools. There's an effort going on. If you have any interest, it's a good thing. I've been working with it for a few years now, and I just feel I'm just at my infancy of what I know. We do coordinate across the county with the emergency manager for how the county responds during an emergency for communications. So again, if all's lost, it's being put together today. The program, I think I mentioned it earlier, was ARES, supported by an effort called OXCOM, which supports the certification of everyone so that you can walk in and know how to use the equipment, right? That you're a viable communication resource. And that's where HAMS could go in and assist at the schools or if we get called out. So there's the repeater, how that would work. And again, Mount Hebo is really the place for the county, all across county, for getting a signal. And we also have a process, which we're working on, where information can be rolled together, right, and presented as a South County singular, for example, report of what's happening in South County. I'm going to talk a few slides about nets. Net is just a name. Radio users give a different name to everything.
One question, is that an acronym or is that?
It's not an acronym. It goes back. I think, to 40s or so, and there's not an acronym for that.
For hams. Not the can hams, but.
And it escapes me. I can't recall. I've looked into that because it's like an interesting why.
Yeah, I wondered, yeah.
That's just a radio. It's just a name given to a group of radio users, communicators that are exchanging information. And it also is a system for managing radio communications to avoid chaos, right? Remember we talked about having during an emergency, everybody gets on, right? And everybody's frantic and trying to talk at once. Well, the net can help to coordinate that. And next slide. The net control is just the person that coordinates that. They just control the net. And they facilitate the communications on the net. So I wouldn't be talking directly to someone. I would give the communications to net control, and then they would pass along that communication. They're really the gatekeeper, just providing where the communications can be coordinated and not manic, right?
That's for official communication.
For official,
They're the gatekeeper for official communication.
yeah, again, if you may find that with loads of people on, that you may have someone that may want to control that, right, to do it. So it's not necessarily official. It depends how you, right? It's a way to manage it, and it could be good. It depends how you're using, right, the network. And I talked about the zones to coordinate. Hebo, we're growing. This is now, you are the presence, right, in Hebo. We've got in Cloverdale now, I think about 4 community users, radio users. I think in Beaver, 3 or 4 that we have. Hebo, we didn't. So this is how the network's really been growing through the years. I've talked about these, right, how communications can be, during an emergency with many people trying to communicate. talking slowly and clearly to transmit accurate information, and that you're prepared to talk, right? That your radio's charged and you're just ready in case it's needed. We do today run a net on the second Wednesday of each month, and it's focused on readiness and training. And you would tune to your zone channel and net control. If it's formal net, they would call out a roll call, and you would check in on a monthly basis. We're currently reviewing the process. There may be changes. It's been mentioned that communities may want to set up a different time that's more convenient, right, to do a radio check. And so we're looking into that and actually discussing that at the next month's meeting. So you tune to your local zone channel and you're going to listen. This is for an emergency net, so now you've got an emergency, right? And you need to use your radio. You're going to tune to your zone channel and listen. You're going to attempt to contact your community, right? And if no reply, well, maybe people just haven't gotten on yet, right? So you're going to, keep your radio on. You'll keep trying. And if there is any information to pass, right, if there is a net control, you can look for information from them. And if it is a formal net, they may be keeping track of attendance, so they know who's there and who's not. Again, we've talked about this. If you do have information for the net, listen for a pause. No one's talking. You're going to identify yourself and say that you have information for the net, or you're looking for information from the net, right? You may want information from others in your community. And then you're either going to, if there is a net control, they're going to acknowledge you, right? Pass your signal or pass you information. If there's no net control, you're going to be conversing with your community, right, for any information. Only, I think, 3 more slides and we're done. So the next steps, we need to identify your network, right, and begin to work on that. Who can you talk to, right, to link up with during an emergency? Is there going to be a net control for your community or not, right, as you do this? Is it going to be an open net? Ham operators, right? If anyone, again, has any interest at all, I can provide more information on that. And if anyone has any interest to work in communications for strategy, and we're welcome to, new people coming down and helping. Just one thing about licensing on it. FCC has clarified that a license is required for the GMRS radios. Now, we as an organization, that's what we recommend, right? But we leave it to everybody, right? Where we don't, you've had my blurb, right, about the licensing. It's good for 10 years, it's good for a family. It's not a bad thing, but there's a cost of $35. There's no exam, it's just a process to go through. And I have gone through, they've updated it, and out at our website, I posted instructions of how you would go and obtain a license. Everything's done by email and electronically these days. And I've spoken to these before, but just a quick. These radios have fixed antennas, so we can't, it's not an add-on that you could do with these radios. You do have those battery packs. You have your correct battery packs. Those battery packs are for other radios that we've supported. But you have your batteries, your extra batteries. Critical, you have those, right? So, you just have a backup. And think about, right, what, not just for radios, but what do you do, right, if electricity power is lost, power's lost for a short period of time, longer period, medium time, longer period of time. It's just a blurb, what do you do, right? Radios need to be recharged every, so often. just keep that in mind. There's a lot of different options that are available there. And I think that's it. Questions?
So are we able to hear, you're saying that there's a repeater on Evo. Is it, like, how do we, like, hear what the ham operator is saying?
Yeah.
Through the repeater on Evo?
Yeah, with these radios you can't.
Oh, okay, you can.
Yeah. With the ones the ones that we support, all right, the information's out at the website. Again, those radios have to be purchased. These we got and we're able to distribute those radios we're able to program to the ham repeaters, the emergency services, police, fire, ambulance services. And we're actually able to program them in. You can't talk, but if you're within reach of that signal, you will pick them up and hear them. All right, but these radios don't give you that option. If I get in there, they don't allow programming is what it is, so I can't go in there and program them.
So it makes sense. The basic principle of communication is we need to know which zone we're in, and then we need to communicate to the net gatekeeper.
If we have,
Yeah, or it's either going to be a formal here or informal, right? But yes, if there is a gatekeeper, then you would work through with the net control. If it's your community conversing, then it doesn't necessarily need to have a formal net control.
So the only way we can communicate with the ham operators, say the one over at the fire station, is if they have one of these. You can't communicate with them on their ham radio.
Not on their ham radio, but part of the ham's kit is a GMRS radio.
They scan these channels too.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Just basically a foot in the door, because we want to be able to communicate with each other and talk with each other in better and better ways. So like, this is like the lowest one, but as we get to go radio more and get our foot in the door and learn how to use these, we were hoping that we might all be able to get a stronger ones, have stronger signals, or have a hot ham operator in our church that we can coordinate to, but it's just the beginning, basically.
So if I'm understanding right, these radios, we contact a ham operator and they can hear us, but we won't be able to hear them back.
You would hear the ham. As a ham operator, I would have my radio. It's a red one back on the table, which is my ham radio. But I'm also going to have a GMRS radio, right? So I would have both, so I could hear you and I could communicate with you. But when I go and switch to my ham and say I want to contact someone in Neskowin from here, and say pass a message right back to Neskowin, you've gotten to the ham operator. As long as we've got a ham operator on both sides, right, they can pass that message. You're just not going to hear them pass that message. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they'll put their ham off radio down and pick up the GMRS
To talk with you, and
talk with me
yes,
so that I can hear them, and then they'll pass the message using the ham.
yes,
It's a relay,
yes.
not direct communication. Relay.
I think we're done. So what I'd like to do is, as everyone goes, we're going to stay here. I'm going to stay here with the radio on, all right? And as everyone goes, I want to make sure that you can turn the radio on and you can talk with me, right? So we've got that, and then you go on your way. As we're going to be monitoring channel 20, all right? And I would think that everybody that's in Hebo is going to get back to their home first pretty quick. And as soon as you get there, do a call out. Do you know everyone where we are?
Bonnie, Crystal, and is that it?
Well, Jay and Mary Lee are probably considered within Evo.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll get there and be monitoring channel 20. and you'll do a call out. We'll talk about that as you're going. You'll do a call out, and we're going to monitor and pick up everyone as we get to Cloverdale. Next is going to be Three River, right? Want to get Three River, and then we're going to hit Cloverdale. And we will see. What I'd like everyone to do is to track, and then when you get together again, if you can get me a list of, yeah, I could hear, I'm sorry, I'm, number one, really bad with names anyways, and I just don't know everyone. But what we like to do is come away that says, I could hear John, Mary, and Jim, all right? But I never heard, I never heard Martha get on the line, on the radio. So it will give us a base of where we are, and then we'll be able to go from there. Beaver, I'm going to set up a time. We'll talk about that before you go, so we can test Beaver. And Cloverdale, we'll test today.
Yeah, and Brandon's between Beaver and Hugo, and she's...
Yeah, we want to test to hear. Yeah, that if you're on and you hear something and you don't hear an acknowledgement from me that says, yes, I copy your signal, I didn't hear you. So, but for example, if you hear that and you don't hear me, then jump in and say, hey, I just heard the transmission, because that's an interesting piece of the puzzle that we want to start to capture.
Okay, so Kiva was 20.
We're all going to be on 20.
We're all going to be
We're all going to be on
and
20.
see if we can hear each other.
Yes, that's what we're doing today. Cloverdale is a different channel, but we need you to be able to talk on both. We need you to,
She's going to go home and listen to 20 and
yeah, we will set up another test of the Cloverdale with you. Yeah.
So there's a chance, Karen, that nobody's going to be able to hear you guys.
no, so unless her, she's the phone.
Yeah.
No, Karen, no, you're not. I already know that we're not going to hear you. Yeah, there's areas I already know, and I'm confident. We're not going to hear Nesquin.
No.
I know, I've tested already. We're not going to hear Cloverdale to Nesquin, and we're not going to hear Beaver to here. Yours is, we'll have to test that.
So, if we wanted to be able to be heard, and if we got the stronger radio, like we have the other one that we recommended before with the longer antenna, would we be able to link in that way?
You could hear the transmission, but you still can't talk.
Okay.
Yeah, you need to be licensed to be able to,
Oh, okay.
right? The other way you could go, and again, it's like I gave you the other options, there is an investment you can make into things like,
Yeah.
satellite, right? Which will bypass all this.
I mean, basically, what I'm getting at is I feel like we're really focused on, focused on talking to each other.
Right.
But this isn't about us. This
I
is about each
understand.
of us having a radio,
Yeah.
being able to help the community.
You're right.
So you're going to be a beacon for Nesquin to however far you are.
Yeah.
Cloverdole's going to be a beacon. We're like, this is like, we are the stronghold.
Exactly.
This isn't for just, hey, how's it going?
No, exactly, yeah.
So I'm trying to make that, but I don't mind too, but it's like, so Three Rivers, I'm gonna have to figure out where we can communicate.
Right.
And that way we can
Yeah.
relay information, there's fire coming down the canyon.
Right.
I can get that information out of,
Right.
and we can get that, just, going. Instead of,
Yep.
flood count, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. In Nesquin, there's an established, so you'll be able to join there and test that. Yep. Did you get your radio working? Is it?
Yeah, it's working. The cloud icon's still displayed, but I'm tuned into channel 20 and
But you are on 20?
Yeah.
And it says VOX?
VOX. No, it does
All right, as we go here, we'll take a quick look at that. All right, so I think we're ready?
Oh, one thing I've got a question, but, so do we leave the radios on, these radios on? I mean, how do you, or do we just wait till emergency and then we turn our radios on? Like,
Yeah.
that kind of work?
Yeah, what I do is I have it ready, but I don't necessarily have it turned on all the time. Because,
It's not like a scanner where we have it on all the
That's
time,
right.
just transmitting, we're waiting for something.
yes, with the other radios, I sometimes will turn it on, right? I'll turn it on to scan, right, to see what is going on, or if I hear sirens, I could turn it on to scan. You can't, these radios won't give you that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I would have these ready to use. You may, again, find that you have other purposes for the radio. Maybe there's a church event where you want to, right, use them. Right, and then you, sure, absolutely. The more you get with using it, right, the more comfortable you get, right? So it's a good thing, and communications could be pretty important in different things. So yeah, absolutely, and then you would have it on, right, during an event. But I think you probably wait till a need, and then, you know, hey, I've lost my phone or something. You turn your radio. Anyone else, right? Right.
Do you know about how long the battery will, like how long you would be able to communicate, like for a day before you need another charge or?
Yeah, see, a lot goes into that because it's both listening and talking. And I'm probably going to say I have to look into that and see if it mentions that. I'm thinking maybe a couple of days. Yeah. And it may go longer.